All right, Cowboys Nation, let's jump right into the hottest topic of the offseason, the coaching carousel and what it means for the Dallas Cowboys. If you've been paying attention, you know this is not just a simple reshuffle. Christian Parker is building his staff from the ground up, and that means some big names are leaving, some roles are being redefined, and the whole identity of the team is being reshaped. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. First up, let's talk about Lunda Wells, because he's the name everyone is watching. Wells is currently interviewing for the offensive coordinator position with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that alone has Cowboys fans on edge. This isn't his first time in coordinator talks either. He previously interviewed for the Washington Commanders' offensive coordinator job, which ultimately went to an internal promotion. But this situation feels different, and honestly, it worries me more. The question isn't just whether Wells will leave, but what his departure would mean for the Cowboys' offense moving forward. Here's the key. The Steelers under Mike McCarthy are likely to offer a setup where Wells could grow without being the primary play caller. That kind of role fits him because he hasn't been a traditional offensive coordinator with a long history of calling plays. And that's important because when McCarthy returned to the NFL with the Cowboys, many expected him to be the play caller, but he wasn't. Now, in Pittsburgh, there's a real chance he could take that role again, which could make it a perfect fit for Wells. The connection is obvious. McCarthy brought Wells to Dallas in the first place. So the relationship is there, and that makes the risk real. From the Cowboys' perspective, this isn't exactly a promotion in the classic sense. It's more of a title upgrade than a true leap in responsibility. A non-play calling offensive coordinator role is not what most teams think of when they hire a coordinator, but still matters. It's a stepping stone, and it could be a major career move. So the question becomes, can the Cowboys keep Wells, or will he be lured away? And if he leaves, how much of a blow is it to the offensive plan? Switching over to the defensive side, the next major story is Aaron White-Cotton leaving for the Tennessee Titans. He's taking the defensive line coaching job with the added title of run game coordinator. That title sounds like a promotion, but in reality, it's more symbolic than substantive. It's a title upgrade, not necessarily a change in status. The key point is that the Cowboys could have blocked the move if they wanted to, but they didn't. They allowed him to leave, and that tells you something about what the organization is trying to do. Why would the Cowboys let him go? Because Christian Parker is trying to build a staff that fits his vision, and that includes having the freedom to pick the people he wants. White-Cotton was a significant part of the previous defensive structure, mainly because of his ties to Robert Saleh and the defensive style he brought from the San Francisco 49ers and New York Jets. He fit that system well, but he may not fit Parker's. Letting him go opens the door for a new defensive identity. It also gives Parker and the organization the chance to bring in someone who fits the new plan better. White-Cotton was good, no doubt, but sometimes it's not about whether someone is talented. It's about whether they fit the scheme and culture. And in this case, it looks like the Cowboys are prioritizing building a cohesive staff over keeping familiar names. One name that keeps popping up as a potential replacement is Marcus Dixon, the Minnesota Vikings defensive line coach. He's already been interviewed for the Cowboys defensive line coach position and has a background that makes him a logical fit. Dixon has worked with the Rams, then became the defensive line coach for the Denver Broncos, and he has direct overlap with Christian Parker. That familiarity matters, especially when you're trying to rebuild a unit. People have also spoken highly of Dixon's ability to develop players. And that's not a small detail. The Cowboys need a coach who could develop talent, not just manage it. They have players who are capable, but still need coaching to reach their full potential. And Dixon seems like someone who can do that. The only issue is competition. The Washington Commanders recently hired Dante Jones as defensive coordinator, and Jones worked with Dixon in Minnesota. That connection could mean Washington is also interested, which could complicate things. Beyond these headline moves, there's a broader staff cleanup happening. The Cowboys have let go several assistants, and this wasn't a surprise. Dave Baranzi, Andre Curtis, and David Overeat II, coaches closely tied to Matt Eberflus' staff, are no longer with the team. That was expected because when a new head coach arrives, he typically brings in his own team. What's significant is that these coaches were key to the previous defensive identity, so their departures signal a real shift in direction. The remaining coaches under contract, like Darian Thompson, J.J. Clark, Brian Bing, and Tanzel Smart, are technically still on the staff, but they're free to explore other opportunities. And with Parker in charge, it wouldn't be shocking if he decided to bring in an entirely new defensive staff. Sometimes a clean slate is what it takes to change culture, and it seems like the Cowboys are willing to take that risk. All of this points to a potential defensive transformation. Parker's background includes a lot of five-man front concepts, and with the names being interviewed, it's starting to look like the Cowboys may lean into more five-man front looks. That could be a great fit for the personnel they have and the direction they want to go. In today's NFL, the difference between a 4-3 and a 3-4 is less important than it used to be. What matters is pressure, versatility, and scheme flexibility. And here's another thing worth noting. The candidates being interviewed are young, 41 years old or younger. That indicates the Cowboys are looking for energy, modern thinking, and coaches who are willing to innovate. That could be a huge advantage, especially in a league that evolves every season. At the end of the day, what we're seeing is a Cowboys organization that seems willing to reinvent its coaching staff in a way we haven't seen in a long time. And while that creates uncertainty, it also opens the door for something much bigger. Because when you commit to change, you risk failure, but you also give yourself a chance to build something lasting. All right, Cowboys Nation, now that we've covered the big coaching movement, let's dig deeper into what this all means for the direction of the Dallas Cowboys, especially on defense. Because if you think this is just a simple staff swap, you're missing the bigger picture. This is about identity, philosophy, and how the team is going to attack offenses in a league that is constantly evolving. And the key thing here is that Christian Parker is not just replacing coaches. He's trying to build a system that reflects his vision. One of the most intriguing aspects of the current situation is the potential shift toward more five-man front looks. With Parker coming from a background that heavily featured five-man fronts, and with several candidates for coaching roles coming from similar schemes, it's not a stretch to think the Cowboys could be leaning in that direction. This doesn't mean the Cowboys will suddenly become a one-trick defense, but it does suggest a renewed emphasis on pressure and controlling the line of scrimmage. The modern NFL is all about confusing offenses, creating mismatches, and forcing quarterbacks into uncomfortable situations. A five-man front, when executed correctly, can be a powerful tool for doing just that. But the truth is, the difference between a 4-3 and a 3-4 defense is not as meaningful as people think. What really matters is how you use your personnel and how you disguise your intentions. A team can line up at a 4-3 and still play like a 3-4, and vice versa. The scheme labels are less important than the concepts behind them. The Cowboys need a defense that can adapt, that can shift and rotate, and that can apply pressure without sacrificing coverage. That's what makes the coaching decisions so important. It's not just about what the name of the scheme is, it's about how it's implemented. And that's where the coaching hires come into play. The candidates being interviewed, like Marcus Dixon, Shane Bowen, Denzel Martin, and Rennell Williams, all share something in common. They are young, they're energetic, and they've been part of systems that emphasize modern defensive concepts. They are not old-school one-way or die coaches. They're the kind of coaches who understand that you need to be versatile and creative to succeed today. That kind of thinking could be exactly what the Cowboys need, especially considering the offense-heavy landscape of the NFL. The question, however, is whether the Cowboys will actually commit to a true overhaul or whether they'll try to blend the old with the new. Sometimes teams fall into the trap of wanting to change everything while still holding on to parts of the past. That can lead to a confused identity, where players are unsure of what they're supposed to do. The Cowboys need clarity. They need a staff that speaks the same language and a system that is consistent. And that's not easy to achieve in one offseason, especially with so many moving parts. On the offensive side, losing Lunda Wells would be a major blow, but it would also force the Cowboys to consider what kind of offensive identity they want. Wells was a big part of the offensive structure, and his presence represented continuity. Without him, the Cowboys would need to decide whether they want to stay with the current offensive framework or pivot to something different. And that decision will shape not only the coaching hires, but also how the team approaches the draft, free agency, and the development of the quarterback. A lot of fans want stability, and that's understandable. Stability is comforting, and it can be successful. But stability without progress is just staying stuck. The Cowboys have to decide whether they want to continue the same approach or take a chance on a new direction. And honestly, the fact that Parker is being allowed to build his own staff suggests the organization is willing to take that chance. That's not something the Cowboys have always done. Historically, the team has been hesitant to fully commit to a new vision. So this is a significant moment. One thing that can't be ignored is the impact on player development. Coaching changes aren't just about strategy. They're about teaching. The Cowboys have players who need to grow, and the coaching staff plays a huge role in that. If the new staff can bring in fresh ideas and better coaching methods, it could help players reach a higher level. But if the transition is messy and inconsistent, it could set the team back. That's the risk. The upside is that a new staff could unlock the potential of players who have been underutilized or misused in the past. We also have to consider the fact that the coaching changes are happening in a broader context. The NFL is trending toward younger, more adaptable coaches. Teams want staff members who can communicate with players, who can innovate, and who can adjust on the fly. The Cowboys appear to be following that trend by interviewing coaches who are under 42. That's not a coincidence. It's a deliberate strategy. They're looking for energy, for modern thinking, and for coaches who can keep up with the pace of the league. The potential hiring of a defensive line coach like Marcus Dixon could also have ripple effects on the entire defense. A good defensive line coach can elevate the whole unit. If the Cowboys can develop their defensive line to be more consistent and disruptive, it changes the way the entire defense operates. The linebackers can play more freely, the secondary can be more aggressive, and the team can create more turnovers. Pressure creates chaos, and chaos leads to mistakes. That's how you win games in the NFL. But again, it comes back to execution. You can have the best scheme in the world, but if the players don't understand it, it doesn't matter. The Cowboys need coaches who can communicate the plan clearly, who can teach the details, and who can hold players accountable. That's the difference between a good coach and a great coach. And it's why these hires matter so much. Another angle to consider is how the Cowboys will handle the continuity of the existing staff. Even if some coaches stay, they will be working under a new leadership structure that can create tension or it can create growth. It depends on how the transition is managed. If Parker is able to build a staff that is unified and aligned, it could create a strong foundation for the future. But if there are mixed messages and conflicting philosophies, the team could struggle to find its identity. But before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Dallas Cowboys. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. Whispers of tension have begun to swirl around the Dallas Cowboys locker room, and it seems the drama isn't confined to the headlines. Sources close to the team claim that star quarterback Dak Prescott and wide receiver CeeDee Lamb were caught in a heated argument on the field during a recent practice session, with voices raised and gestures flaring in front of teammates. Eyewitnesses say the confrontation centered around offensive strategy, with Dak allegedly urging teammates not to pass to Lamb at certain moments, a move that has raised eyebrows across the NFL. The incident, if confirmed, could signal deeper cracks in the Cowboys' chemistry. Prescott, who has long been the face of the franchise, is known for his fiery competitiveness, but teammates and insiders worry that the exchange with Lamb, a rising star and one of the league's most dynamic receivers, may indicate frustration with the play calling or with execution on the field. It's not just about one game. It's about leadership and trust, said one anonymous source. When your quarterback and your top receiver are shouting at each other, that's going to be noticed, and it's not a good look. Fans and analysts have speculated whether this disagreement was merely a passing flare of tempers or the symptom of a broader tactical dispute. Some suggest Prescott may feel constrained by the offensive scheme, while Lamb, whose explosive talent has transformed Dallas' passing game, might be frustrated with missed opportunities. The timing of the argument, reportedly captured during a high-intensity drill, has fueled chatter that the playbook could be under review, but the Cowboys are facing internal struggles that go beyond the usual preseason jitters. Social media has erupted with clips and screenshots, with commentators debating whether this public display of discord is a minor bump in the road or the start of a more serious locker room issue. Veteran players and coaches often remind fans that tempers flare in high-stakes environments, but the optics of a star quarterback and receiver clashing so openly have left the Cowboys fan base divided. Some argue it's a sign of passion and accountability, while others fear it's an early warning of a squad struggling to align around a single vision. While the Cowboys have yet to issue a formal statement, insiders hint that team meetings and private conversations are ongoing behind closed doors. The rumor mill is already running wild. Will this conflict ignite a tactical shakeup, or is it simply a blip in a season that promises high expectations and intense scrutiny? One thing is certain: Dallas watchers will be monitoring Prescott and Lamb closely, eager to see whether this explosive debate on the grass will translate into tension on the field. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Dallas Cowboys, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. We always look forward to your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.